Oh man, you guys ready for some pie charts? What's going on, guys? It's Cimo, and today I'm bringing to you a meta-analysis for the August 2018 format. The competitive season is finally back in full swing. We had like 11 regionals this past weekend or some crazy number like that. Not to mention we had the ARG Invitational, which I know some of you guys are a bit iffy about ARG tournaments, but keep in mind this was a tournament with a $12,000 prize pool at its disposal, and pretty much every good player who earned their invite to that tournament was trying to get that cash. And speaking of cash, Imperium Duelist also hosted a cash tournament of their own over in California. So we're going to be covering all of these events to try to get some sort of grasp on the meta while we're waiting for the new ban list. But before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest YouTube channel members as always. So big shout outs today to James, to Jonathan, and Mr. GameCube17. You guys are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support the channel by becoming a YouTube channel member, hit the join button right below the video or check out the links in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it and get to everyone's favorite part of the meta analysis, the pie chart. This is going to be the top 32 breakdown from the ARG Invitational. Now, as you can see here, this is pretty representative of what we've come to expect, because you have to realize, even though we're in a brand new competitive season, we had the North American and the European World Championship qualifiers and all the other World Championship qualifiers take place. The format hasn't exactly changed. You know, we've had some new products introduced like Cybernetic Horizon, we've got Shadows in Valhalla coming up later this week, and we also had Summon Sorceress now officially become legal. But has that really shifted the meta around? Not too much. Now, we can see here that Gouki is still the dominating force that it once was, and again, that really shouldn't come as a surprise. It had 11 of the top 32 slots. Gouki was also just all over the regionals this past weekend. Summon Sorceress is part of the reason for that. I mean, you don't need Summon Sorceress in Gouki, but the thing is, it makes doing the combo so much easier, and it's just so abusable. This is one of the most craziest combo extenders and enablers that's ever been printed in this game. So not only do you have already a crazy consistent combo deck in Gouki, but now you have Summon Sorceress that's legal for that as well. So just something to keep in mind, Gouki's still the best deck. That's pretty much an undisputed fact. There are two different variants of Gouki running around right now. We have the rank 3 focus build that pretty much just focuses on turboing out Invoker as fast as possible with all sorts of level 3 monsters like Marauding Captain, Junk Forward, Aqua Dolphin. Gillosaurus has been introduced into the mix now thanks to Jesse Cotton, and it's searchable through Fossil Dig, giving you so many different ways to access Invoker and pretty much just go off doing all your standard Gouki plays. It's a really crazy deck, but then on the other hand, you have a variant that's also playing cards like Armageddon Knight, Destiny Hero Malicious, Elemental Hero Shadow Mist, which gives you access to Masked Hero Darklaw, and that actually puts a really interesting spin on the deck because it allows the deck to do some things it couldn't already do. Some people might argue that Gouki is refined enough to this point that you shouldn't really change a good thing, especially, you know, if it's not broke, why would you fix it, right? But it's kind of cool to see that both of these variants are actually doing rather well. I mean, I would say there was like 3 or 4 of the 11 slots at the ARG Invitational that were playing that Armageddon Malicious Shadow Mist variant, so that proves that the deck can do well even when it goes on a different take. So that's pretty cool, but don't really want to stick on Gouki for too long because we know it's still the strongest deck, and it's going to continue to be while this ban list is still in effect. Interestingly enough, though, Pure Sky Striker taking 7 of the top 32 slots, and I find this fascinating for a couple reasons, because you guys remember not too long ago, Sky Striker was kind of like the solidified bronze medal deck of the format, that it was always going to be in 3rd no matter what. Well, now it's taking 2nd, taking up those 7 slots, and, you know, is that because of Hayate? Possibly. Is that because of, you know, the fact that Sky Striker can run a million hand traps to combat Gouki? Maybe. There's a lot of different reasons you can contribute to Sky Striker's success in this event. And it wasn't just this event. I think if you talk to anyone who attended any events this past weekend, there was a lot more Pure Sky Striker running around than normal. And this is where it's cool because we start to see these little tiny shifts in the metagame, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more a bit later. Trickstar Sky Striker took up 4 of the top 32 slots. This shouldn't really be a surprise. This was formerly the best deck before Gouki pretty much took it over. It's still a very consistent deck. Obviously, he's lacking in some areas, but it's just a very well-rounded kind of jack-of-all-trades deck, and it continues to show success even to this very day. Not really much has changed. The builds are pretty much exactly the same. Can still run a ton of hand traps, which is a very strong advantage against your Gouki matchup, and it's relatively simple to play. So I think that's why you're still seeing the deck have success. And very interestingly enough, Altergeist took up 4 of the top 32 slots as well. Now, one of those players was Doug Zeef, one of our fellow Yu-Gi tubers, so shoutouts to him for making it all the way to top 32. But Altergeist I find rather interesting here because Altergeist was that deck before that was flying heavily under the radar when it came to the North American WC, the European WCQ, all the different WCQs that just took place around the world. Altergeist might have had like 1 top, maybe 2 at most, and everyone just kind of like pretty much turned a blind eye to it because it wasn't really doing a whole lot. But why is that? Well, Trickstar Sky Striker actually has an extraordinarily good matchup against Altergeist. So I think during the WCQ season, because that deck was at the forefront, Altergeist was a deck that wasn't really on a lot of people's minds or wasn't able to do as well due to the increased popularity of Trickstar Sky Striker. But now that Gouki's at the forefront, I think it's actually given Altergeist the opportunity to have a chance. And also with an increased tick in Sky Striker Pure, we've seen that Altergeist is one of the best decks in the OCG, with Sky Striker Pure being the best deck in their format. So obviously you can go toe-to-toe with that deck to an extent, but I also think Altergeist has a pretty good matchup against Gouki, and we kind of saw that from the World Championship. Obviously the World Championship has its own ban list and it's a little bit different, but Gouki was pretty much at full power, and so was Altergeist for the most part too. And we saw Altergeist was one of the most popular decks in the room and was able to combat Gouki and pretty much take it head on. So now that we're seeing Gouki move to the forefront, Altergeist and Sky Striker are starting to move up a little bit, which is bringing down Trickstar Sky Striker. It's kind of cool just how all the moving parts of the meta start to work when you look at it in the big picture. Lastly, there was True Draco having at least more than 1 top. I believe there were 3 True Dracos in the top 32. This is pretty much just like the solidified tier 2 stun deck of the format. Play some big monsters, play a ton of floodgates, play a ton of draw power, and you know what? Somehow the deck is going to do well. The deck has pretty much been proven that it's in that spot. It's been able to get multiple tops for the past few months, so no surprise there. Wrapping up the ARG though, there was 1 Dinosaur player, again, a deck we know does well, 1 Burning Abyss, I believe it was a second Burning Abyss build, nothing really too spectacular. We also had a Shiranui deck, like pure zombie Shiranui. I thought that was rather interesting. And last but not least, we had a Crusadia deck. Yes, I definitely think Crusadia is a very strong rogue pick moving into this format. Its win condition is essentially to just make 1 monster that can just OTK your opponent with a single attack, while also having some control elements to kind of like control out the game until you get to that point. It's a really fascinating deck, and you guys should definitely look into it, or definitely be aware that it's something that you might pop up and, you know, going up against at your regionals. So pretty cool to see that it got a top slot. I don't know how far it made it, but obviously it was there. So probably Crusadia's first top of the brand new format. Now I want to move on to the Imperium Duelist Top 8. Just for a bit of reference, this was a tournament. I believe it had like over 160 players. I believe first place got like $1,200 or something. So again, big cash prize tournament attracts very competitive players because when money's on the line, it definitely changes the dynamic. And having a player count of over 160 kind of matches some regionals, so that's really something you got to consider. And also, we have the data of their top 8 compared to regionals where it's a little bit harder to get data of all the different decks in their top cut. So for the Imperium Duelist tournament, I believe there was 2 Gouki, 2 Pure Sky Striker, 2 Trickstar Sky Striker, and I think there was a Pure Trickstar and a Mech Knight invoked. So again, this is kind of similar to what we've already come to expect. I think Mech Knight invoked is a little bit of an outlier here. I guess Pure Trickstar is to an extent as well. It's kind of like a Trickstar Sky Striker player just like divided themselves in half and then just got 2 tops. Kind of weird, but it's one of those things where, you know, Gouki, Trickstar, Sky Striker, and Pure Sky Striker are all still there. There was no Altergeist though, which is rather interesting, and Pure Sky Striker ended up winning the entire event. So congrats to the person who won that. I still think it's pretty cool to see that these little tournaments are popping up, especially with a big cash prize on the line. Wrapping everything up though, like I said, it is a bit difficult to kind of get some of the results from these regionals, so that's why I like the ARGs in these smaller tournaments to actually offer the results, so we can actually compare this data rather well, or when we get YCSs, it's really easy to kind of interpret that data. But that all aside, even though all these regionals were just running abundant with, you know, Gouki, Trickstar, Sky Striker, you know, all these different decks, there were some crazy decks that were actually able to take first place. I believe there was a 6 Samurai deck that got first place at the Omaha Regional. There was a Danger Burning Abyss deck that took first place in Canada. And there was a Cyber Dragon deck that took first place at a regional as well. And I'll try to get that deck profile for you guys, but no promises. But when you just look at this format, I love that we're at a point now where even though the format's kind of solved, we're at a point where we're seeing all these other decks kind of being experimented with because they're cards that never had the opportunity to shine prior to the WCQs because they weren't really released yet or they weren't legal. So now that we have Summon Sorceress, now that the new Cyber Dragon support's legal, now that Danger is legal, all pretty much cards out of Cybernetic Horizon, we're going to see some new decks be toyed around with. And not to mention Shadows in Valhalla comes out at the end of this week, which means if you're going to a regional this upcoming weekend, you might have to deal with all the cards out of that set, like Alistair, the Invoker of Madness for any invoked variants. There's a lot of things that could come out this upcoming weekend, and if there's anything staggering, I'll definitely be sure to update you guys. But my favorite part here is seeing the experimentation and seeing what decks people are coming up with in a format that was essentially solved. And yeah, sure, we do have a ban list lingering out maybe only a few weeks from now, hopefully, but it's one of those things where now that we see decks like Cyber Dragon able to win a regional or Danger Burning Abyss able to win a regional, people might toy around with that deck more and really start to test the consistency, test the different matchups, and then we're going to start to see the meta shift even more, and that's just what I love about competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! It's pretty much never just, you know, stagnant. It's always a moving entity, and that's just what's really fun about playing at the competitive level. So, guys, that's going to do it for this meta analysis. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about these results or any of the crazy first place decks that came out of this weekend. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider becoming a YouTube channel member, because just by pledging your support for the channel, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.